Make a note, chamber staff take note, question wrong.
Well, you know, gotta tell it the way it is.
On topic of, no, that's your terrific teamwork. I just want to know which one's click and which one's clack.
There you go. We were trying to remember.
We're not retired, I can tell you that.
There you go.
I also want to invite the audience to make their way to the microphones to ask you questions. But one of the things that you said, Mayor Fischer, in your opening remarks was one of the challenges is to invigorate Washington and also to sort of energize the State House to get behind some of your initiatives and this initiative too. So the question was raised, but I want to ask you how best to do that with the partisanship and turmoil that we see on the national stage, and some would even read some of that into what we see in Frankfurt. How best do you go about maneuvering through that for the benefits of both of your cities?
Well, you got a big picture question and a tactical question. On the tactical level, we work with both Washington and Frankfurt on support for programs, you know, that we can get here. It might be a grant, it might be some cooperation from the Department of Commerce, getting the governor's office to help us with the BEAM initiative. So that's kind of at the tactical level. But on the bigger picture, this paralysis that we're facing in our country right now, until people that give money to politicians, whether it be at the individual level or citizens, basically say, until you guys start working together as parties, I'm not going to give you any money. I don't think that's going to change. Or unless there's some type of revolt at the voting block. I mean, the type of hyper-partisanship that we see in the country right now and in state houses is basically stopping our country while we see China, Germany, and others beating us on the international playing field. This is not like 25 years ago when we didn't know what was going on around the world and we didn't know we were getting beat. Well, we know we're getting beat right now, but we don't have the will to get that done. And anytime one party tries to do something, the other party tries to stop it. We got to say, that's enough, I'm not going to support you, and I think we've got to somehow address this Citizens United issue too with these anonymous super PACs is, I think, a horrendous impact on our electoral process.
Mayor Gray, how would you respond?
What's driving this awareness, increased awareness, I think, for cities is the numbers. Just in the last few months, the Pew Institute Research Institute has said that one of the prevailing influences today is the growth of productivity in cities. Now, that sounds a little bit like a almost oxymoronic, because it's like, what is it about, you know, you'd expect in a connected time electronic connection so flexible that would not be the case, you know, that distribution, that people would be distributing. Well, for the first time in 75 years, people are moving more to cities, so there's a greater in-migration to cities, and there is higher productivity. What is it about? Why is that? Well, even in this age of electronic connections, people recognize that relationships and connections mean so much. So this is something Greg and I were both happened to be invited. I was proud to be the smallest city of a group of 15 mayors with Michael Bloomberg 12 weeks ago. This was a theme that was shared with us by Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google and now chairman. He said, what you guys have got, he says, you've got great brands, and guess what? All the numbers are saying, all the demographics are saying that's where the action is. So this is where the energy is. This is where the opportunity lies. And as far as our state, and Greg has said this really well, he says, you know, what we want to be as cities in the state, we want to be the places where if young people, for example, or others going to move from, like I did, from Glasgow, my hometown, where my brother says, you know, our pillow's in Lexington, our heart's still in Glasgow. But if you're going to leave and go somewhere else where that pull may be, that gravitational pull to a city, you know, let it be Lexington or Louisville instead of Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Nashville, you know, Chicago.
Mayor Fischer, on the State House level, I know a lot of members of the audience probably have these questions. We've had a debate in Kentucky for a long time about what cities can and cannot do, and the ability in tax districts, for example. And quite frankly, I've often wondered, after being in Frankfurt for a long time myself, why we can't get something like that done. I mean, there is opposition there. And I'm sure there are plenty of people probably in the audience that disagree with me on that too. But talk a little bit about why that's important to not only you as a large metropolitan area, but the smaller cities too, and why you think it should be really looked at and approached in a positive way.
Thank you. So take a city like Louisville. We generate in total $2.4 billion in taxes. That's quite a bit, $2.4 billion in taxes. We get back from Frankfurt $1.2 billion in taxes. So basically 50 cents of every dollar that we generate here doesn't come back to the people that generated it. We're going to be a partner with the state. I get that. That's good. But we need some tools to compete with other cities that have the ability to have local options where when they decide a specific project for a specific reason, they're going to pay for it with a sales tax, let's say half cent or 1 cent for a year, that we need to be able to execute those projects. Now, to get a local option sales tax in Kentucky requires a change in the state constitution, so it's not something we can just go about doing tomorrow. And people say, oh, that's hard, that's not gonna, we can't do that. Well, I said, look, man, that's a losing attitude. That's an attitude where we're going to just continue to recede. We've got to reinvigorate our state. We've got to give ourselves, give our cities, give our counties these tools that are present in 38 other states. So how would you all like to go into a competitive battle with other companies and not have 80% of the weapons to battle with? You'd never do that. So why do we allow that to take place in the city? Local option sales tax can be as diverse as, let's say, we want a new forensic crime lab in Louisville, costs $35 million. Could be public transportation, could be schools. But again, they're optional. So in other words, the voters of your city, the voters of your county get to vote, yes or no. So it's up to us then to create a vision that's compelling enough where people say, you know what, I want to invest in that. People say, oh, you can't say the T word, the tax word. I mean, have we gotten that Neanderthal where we can't even have a conversation? These are not taxes, these are investments. When you take a look at the Ohio River Bridges project that we're finally going to get started after 42 years, while all of our surrounding cities have tripled in size, and we sit back and think we don't need to be relevant in the 21st century. Folks, that's not how you win. And then what that means is your kids move away, and then we wonder why it's going to take place. We're paying for the Ohio River Bridges taxes, Ohio River Bridges project, by people that use the bridge, because that's the way the world is right now. So I just think it's important that the people that are closest to the action get to vote on whether or not they want these initiatives, so that they're saying, yes, I want to invest in this future of my community. Just give me the choice to do that.
Well, argue against your proposition. Why is there opposition to this, and why can't you get it passed?
Well, we just started 2 weeks ago, so you know, we're using, the governor's got his Blue Ribbon Tax Commission going around the state, and they've said, well, we just want to do state tax stuff. I said, look, you got to address city issues. Cities between Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and Bowling Green area, we have this thing called the Metropolitan Alliance for Growth. So the cities, what's unique to our cities? We generate, what, Jim, between 68 and 70% of the state's GDP. So we have unique needs, and so we're working on it from that area as well. We're going to these tax commission hearings and saying, give the cities some play in this game. I mean, to redo the state tax code without taking a look at the need of the cities would be like redesigning an automobile and just changing the body and not changing the engine. The cities are the engine of the economy in any state.
Mayor
Jim,
Gray,
maybe
what
you
would
can
add
argue
to that?
against it.
Yeah, I think Greg said it really well, and the metaphor that I use is a similar. You know, if you're in the business like many of you guys are, many of you all are, then you see an inflection point, you see an opportunity for growth, and you know, you want to push the throttle forward. You know that the opportunities, the marketing opportunities, the sales opportunities are there, and it's like you got a hand on the throttle. You know, that you just simply cannot move it. So, and that represents the frustration that we have. Now, from Lexington's point of view, some of you all in the room have been on Lexington's the annual chamber. Bob Quick, hold up your hand. Bob has led the chamber for 10 years, and we have gone to the ones I remember: Oklahoma City, more recently, just this year, San Antonio. And we will have someone come before us at the beginning of the session, just like here, and they will tell about how wonderful their city is, like Oklahoma City or San Antonio, and they will show us all these great projects that they've done, whether it's like Greg was saying, whether it's schools or whether it's a new entertainment district, and they will say, we got it through the local option tax. And everybody in the room will just get really depressed right about that time. And then we will say, oh my goodness, like Greg said, it's like, well, it's a Byzantine process to get it done. Well, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about this, in fact, Judge Buchanan from Bowling Green, from Warren County, said that 12 years ago, he tried to bring it up with county judges, and it just got shut down. But Mike said that in those intervening 12 years, perhaps perceptions have changed and things have changed. And what I was thinking was, I've been hearing us talk about it in Lexington now for all these many years. We might as well go ahead and chase it. We might as well go ahead and try. Because if we don't, then it's going to be another 10 years before we have these opportunities to make these decisions on our own.
And I'd ask you all to help us with that.
Yep.
I mean, if you believe your local citizens should have a say on investing in their cities, in the future of their cities, again, specific projects, specific timelines, specific payment. This is not some sneak attack to raise taxes. We need your help.
It will be characterized as such, however, more than likely.
I know that others have questions, and I do really want to encourage you. Our first session, and we're just getting started, but I know there have to be some things rolling over in your mind. So make your way. We do have a few minutes left. Let me just follow up on that, and then I have another one. How can they help you best? You do need their help. Should they see, if they're from a smaller community, should they see their mayor or their city council person? Should they certainly see their legislator and begin? Are there talking points that they need? Is there some education process that they need before they begin to help you?
Well, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the electoral process and legislation is a contact sport, and it's surprising by how few people really are involved with it. So the more that you speak to your elected officials about it, the better. And if they say, ask for a commitment. I mean, everybody in this room is probably in sales. Everybody's in sales one way or another. Ask for the order. Can you support this? Yes or no? Why or why not? So we really start understanding what the issues are. But as we roll this out, we can get talking points out in some way where everybody is more informed. But it's a basic, simple concept. I think everybody gets that. But I would say help us create the dialogue. And in general, I mean, if you agree with kind of some of my basic premises that we're living in a global world right now, to be competitive, we got to have more education. We need to be thinking about best in world. I mean, if you believe in that stuff, it comes up to us, to you all as leaders here in the state, to make it happen. And it's not when somebody says, oh, we've tried that before, or they kind of snicker when you bring something up, like that's not going to get done. I mean, basically what you're saying is you're going along for the status quo. And I would just submit that the status quo is not going to serve us well as we go into this more competitive economy, this global world that we're in right now.
We often said at the very beginning when we started this initiative that the lens is on Louisville and Lexington. Well, Louisville and Lexington do have clearly, brands that to some extent reach beyond the city limits. But it really is far more than just about Louisville and Lexington and our metro regions. It is about the whole state. Because as the destinies and as the success of the leading cities, as our success or our problems occur, so too the rest of the state in many, many respects. I mean, the numbers just illustrate that. So we also recognize, though, the realities of an initiative like this. and that it's like a campaign. And it starts with working the issues in Frankfurt, and because of the nature of this one, it does have to go to a constitutional amendment.
Let's take a question, please.
Hi, I'm Lynn King with Lourdes Hospital in Paducah. I'm also the mother of 3 young children, and when we talk about what they want to be when they grow up, you know, some of them, they'll say a ninja warrior, or they want to be a, you know, school bus driver or whatever. I thought it was refreshing to hear your comment as far as it's not just getting a college degree, but what kind of degree do you want to get? And I'm just wondering, what are we doing as far as educating the youth when they're in elementary school and middle school, and not just waiting for when they're graduating from high school? What are we doing to let them know what is the demand for jobs? What would this degree mean? What do you have to do to prepare for the degrees before waiting for you to be in college to get that degree? So I was just wondering, is there a concerted effort to go statewide to say, you know, we need engineering degrees, and this is what an engineer does, and this is what you can do with an engineering degree, and make it exciting for the youth to want to be engineers? Is there anything going on that you know about?
Tactically, I want to say real quick that it was sort of a fortuitous comment. Just last night, I was on the telephone with a leading member of the clergy in Lexington. His name is Willis Polk, and he is the pastor at Amani Baptist. You know Willis real well. He's a great pal of Greg's. African-American congregation, one of the top 3 in the city. And we were talking about the project, about the BEAM project, about Bloomberg's challenge. And he was saying himself, he said, I hope that somewhere in this there will be a place for career education. He said, so many kids today, he said, in my community, he said, I told them not long ago, that it's not just sports and music. But the awareness for even those opportunities, that it doesn't exist, is a big deal. So what you've described, I think, is one of many strategies that, you know, we got to dig at and work on. And the best thing I think that has come from this, at least so far, is that the right people are around the right problem-solving table. And an issue like that, you know, Margaret is already taking notes. I can see her in her head, you know, that is able to have a place now to be worked on.
At our local level here, we've got a big public school system. Jefferson County Public School System is 100,000 students, $1.2 billion budget. They use a series of magnet schools to where if you're interested in engineering or the environment or software or whatever, kids have a choice on where to go to school. We need to do a better job. We've learned this in the BEAM project of kind of that continuum from high school, might then just be to semi-skilled manufacturing work through the technical college, or it might be a track that goes all the way up to a PhD program that's working on alternative energy storage areas. Like you'll see that we have the Argonne lab now that's opening in Lexington for research into long-life batteries that will be used in cars for electrification of vehicles. So on the local level, I think we can direct kids that way, but I would suggest on the statewide initiative, like this engineering problem, that's a big problem for us being prepared for the 21st century. So that needs to start in the governor's office, working with the universities, and then a statewide awareness campaign of what our opportunities are, so it becomes part of the conversation like we're having today and in our communities as well. And we celebrate kids that go down the science, technology, engineering path, because clearly we're not keeping up with the rest of the country, and we know that's where the jobs of the future are as well. So again, we know what the problem is. What are we going to do about it?
And I think your point as far as consistent messaging throughout the state, because obviously a lot of students go and feed into the colleges in Louisville and Lexington. So if we can have consistent messaging throughout the state and continue to feed the STEM, the engineering, the whatever it is, computer sciences, all those different areas, I think that will pay off. It's a long-term investment, but I think it's a worthwhile
I agree.
strategy.
And we have to really amplify the conversation about everybody needs something beyond a high school degree. The unemployment rate right now for people that don't have a high school degree is 62%. You know, so when you hear this stuff about, well, Johnny really isn't college material. Well, guess what? Johnny's not going to be able to provide for himself, much less a family, for the rest of his life, you know, unless he doesn't get a plumbing certificate or some type of thing beyond high school. So to me, it comes down to one of these issues. If you love Johnny, or you at least passively care about the guy, you know, we need to help and encourage them to get something beyond high school, not just for his good, but for the good of the state as well. So it's that culture change that says we're a state of lifelong learners. We understand that's necessary to be competitive.
Thank you.
Let me ask both of you, if you would, just to conclude by giving us a minute or so on your greatest hope for the initiative that you've begun within a reasonable period of time. I'm going to set, let's say, a decade or a decade plus that you would like to see come out of this. Again, not just for Lexington and Louisville, but for the Commonwealth. Click, go first.
Okay. Well, we talked about one earlier, and on the business side, we have a 5-year goal to increase exports by 50%, number of companies. That's not only good for the economy, numbers of jobs, et cetera, but as I mentioned earlier, it's good for the mindset. You know, where people say, if I'm competing in Paducah or Paris or Versailles in Kentucky or Versailles in France, you know, we understand we're all part of this big globe. So that would be one on the business side. And I think on a personal side, it would be in 10 years to say, wow, we're a state of lifelong learners. You know, our percentage of adults with college educations has dramatically improved. Our numbers of engineers, people that are really getting degrees for 21st century jobs, we understand what that continuum is like. We've reoriented our universities, and we're producing graduates in that area. We're making progress.
And, you know, I think Greg's right. You know, the metrics and the measures would all point to north, and that the perception of Kentucky would improve from what Mark Twain described it as, that when the end of the world comes, that he wants to be in Kentucky. Why? Because everything happens 20 years later. That we would have, that would not be, that wouldn't be attributed to Kentucky. I think that another thing that, you know, so much of this is about the spirit. So much of it is about the mood. So much of it is about our commitment to place. And when we can celebrate the success of our cities and our state all together, then, you know, we can look back and say, you know, we had a part of that. That's a big deal. When I see a group like this, you know, there's always a hazard that you'll forget to recognize someone. And Greg and I were saying on the way up here that, you know, Paul Costell, Paul, hold your hand up, has been the leader for raising the funds for this project, the chairman of the J.P. Morgan Chase here, and so many others. Well, that demonstrates the kind of commitment and the kind of attachment that people have and the kind of aspirations that we have for our native land.
Ladies and gentlemen, aren't we fortunate to have such dynamic leaders in Mayor Fischer and Mayor Gray?
Thank you.
Good job, sir.
Thanks, Mayor. I didn't get to talk about that.
And thank you so much for being here this afternoon.